This video is sponsored by Dev Mountain. If you're interested in learning web development, iOS, or UX design, Dev Mountain is a 12-week design and development bootcamp intended to get you a full-time position in the industry. To learn more, visit devmountain.com or click the link in the description below. Hey, what's going on, guys? So in this project, we're going to be building something pretty practical, something that a lot of people have asked me for through the years, and that is how to load a PDF in a web page. And we're going to basically not just load the PDF, but we're going to have some pagination at the top if it is a multi-page document. So as you can see, this is page 1 of 5. We're going to create this little nav bar where we can just scroll through the different pages of the PDF. So very useful, very practical. Also, we'll make it so that we can show the error. For instance, if it can't load the PDF, I'm just going to change the file path here in my code and save, and you'll see that it'll just give us the error and tell us that it's missing the PDF. Now, in order to follow along, you do have to have your code running on some kind of server. I'm using VS Code's live server because it won't work if you just try to load this in a file. All right, now we're going to be using something called pdf.js, which is pretty popular. It has 25,000 stars on GitHub, and this is the, let's see, this doesn't tell us much. We're going to be using the CDN. We're not going to like install it with NPM or anything like that. We're going to keep this very simple, something that you can integrate into just about any project you want. I really like the syntax. It's asynchronous. We use promises. We'll use, modern JavaScript. So I think that you guys will enjoy this, and hopefully you can find somewhere where you can use it. Now, as far as this PDF that I'm using, this 995 document, this is just a sample PDF. What I did is I searched for sample PDF, and it's this one right here. So if you want to go ahead and download this, and what I did, or what I'm going to do, is just put it in a docs folder, and then we'll create our script, our HTML, and a little bit of CSS for this top part right here. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to jump into VS Code, and what I'm going to do is just create, I got an empty folder called PDF Viewer, and I'm just going to create a folder called Docs just to store my PDF in, and I'm going to drag it over. So it's the same sample one that I showed you, and I just called it pdf.pdf. Okay, but you can call it whatever you want. And then let's create the rest of our structure here. So we need an index.html, and we need, let's create a folder called CSS, and what else? We need a folder called JS, and inside JS we'll create a file called main.js, and in CSS we'll create a file called style.css, and that should be good for our structure. So in the index HTML, let's just generate a boilerplate with Emmet, and we'll change the title to PDF Viewer. And what else do we want to do? Let's bring in our CSS, and we'll bring in our JavaScript down at the bottom here. So it's JS/main.js. Okay, now we're going to need the pdf.js CDN. So right above our main.js, let's put in another script, and this is going to go to https, and it's mozilla.github.io/pdf.js/build/pdf.js. So that's the link that we want for our CDN. We're also going to be using Font Awesome, so let's grab that real quick. If we go to fontawesome.com, I should just create a snippet for this, and we'll just grab that and paste this right above our style CSS. Okay, so now we're ready to create the body, which isn't going to be much. Basically, we're using a canvas to place our PDF, and then we also need the top bar. So right in the body here, let's create a div with the class of top-bar, and we're going to want a button with a class of btn, and let's give it an ID of prev-page. This is the previous page button. And we're going to have an icon, so we're going to do I with the class of FAS, Font Awesome, and then the icon we want is FA-arrow- circle-left. Okay, and then to the right of that, we're just going to say prev page. All right, and then let's just copy this whole button here. We'll just bring this down, and let's change this ID to next page. Change the icon to right, and let's put the text. Oops, let's put the text on the other side. So over here, we'll say next page. All right, and then underneath the div with the class of top bar, actually, I'm sorry, we still want to be in here. We want to put the page, 1 of 5 or whatever, and those numbers are going to be dynamic. We're going to insert those with JavaScript, but we do need placeholders for them. So let's create a span with the class of page-info. And in here, we're going to say page, and then the page number. So I'm going to use a span here and give it an ID of page-num. Okay, so we'll insert it there, and then we'll say of, and then we want the total page count to display. So we'll create an ID of page-count. All right, and then outside this div, we'll put our canvas, and let's give this an ID of pdf-render, like that. All right, so that should be it for the HTML. Let's save it, and I'm going to open this up with Live Server, which if you don't have, you can click on the extension here and just search for live-server, and it's going to be this first one right here. Okay, once you do that, you can go ahead and right-click and open with Live Server. All right, so this is what it's going to look like. So we haven't added any CSS or anything yet. I think we'll do that last, create the styling and so on. So let's jump into our main.js. So first thing I'm going to do here is set a variable of URL, and this is going to be wherever the document is, wherever the PDF is. So in our case, it's going to be .. so outside of the JavaScript folder, in the docs folder, and then it's called pdf.pdf. And this could be, HTTP something. This could be some remote document somewhere else as well. And we're going to create a bunch of other variables. I'm going to use let here because these are global variables that will be reassigned at some point. So we're going to have one called pdf.doc, which is going to represent the document that we get with pdf.js. And this is going to be set to null by default. Okay, and then I'm going to put a comma here, and we're also going to set a page num value to 1. Okay, so we want to start on the first page. We're going to set page is rendering, and we're going to set that to false. So basically, when we run our render page method, this is going to be set to true, and then once we go ahead and fetch the PDF, then this will be set back to false. All right, so it's basically just going to tell us the state of the page render. And then we also have page num is pending if we're fetching other pages, multiple pages, and this is going to be set to null by default. All right, now we have some constants to set as well. One is going to be the scale, which is the size. I'm going to set to 1.5. You guys can mess with this after if you want. I'm also going to set the canvas. So we're going to take that from the DOM. So document dot, we'll use query selector, and we have it in an ID of pdf-render. So that's our canvas, and then we want the context. So we want ctx, and we're going to set that to our canvas dot, and then get context, and we want to pass in 2D. Okay, so basically what we're doing is fetching the PDF, and then we're going to put it in this canvas. All right, now we're going to have a few functions in this file. One is going to be render page. So this is going to actually, it's not going to get info. Let's just say render the page, and I'm going to use arrow functions. You can use regular functions if you want, but I'm just going to say const render page. It's going to take in a num, so a page number, needs to know which one to render. And before I do anything here, I'm going to go down and get the document. Okay, so we want to get the document, and then inside the inside here, once we get the document, we're going to call render page. Now the way that we get it is we have access to this pdf.js lib object since we use the CDN. Okay, since we included this CDN right here, we have access to this object, and there's a method called getDocument, which does just that, and that's going to take in the URL of the document, which we described above. Now this will give us a promise back. However, if we do just .then, it'll give us a warning. It wants us to do promise, .promise .then, and then what it's going to give us is the doc. Okay, so I'm going to say PDF doc, and I'm going to use an arrow function. All right, we'll handle the possible error after. But basically, what this is it includes the document, all the info, everything that we need. Now, up here, I set a global PDF doc variable, and what I want to do is set this to this. So I'm going to just add an underscore here, and then we're gonna set the global PDF doc equal to that PDF doc that we get back. All right, and just to show you what that gives us, let's just console log it. So if I save this, this should run and it should log the PDF doc that it gives us. So let's open up the tools, Chrome tools here, look in our console, and you'll see we have this loading task, we have PDF info, but what we want to look at is num pages, which you can see is 5. Because when we call the render page method that we created, we need to pass in the number of pages, okay, right here. Now, before I run the render page method, I want to add the total number of pages to this right here, where it says page something of, and then it should show the number of pages. Now, if you remember, that has a span with the ID of page count. So let's grab from the document. Let's use query selector, and let's say we want the span with the ID of page count, and then we're going to set the text content to the PDF doc, and then I showed you it had that num pages property. So we're going to set that, and if we go back, now you'll see that it shows 5 because there's 5 total pages. Now, after we do that, we want to call render page, and we want to pass in the page num. Okay, we actually don't want to pass in this. This is the total number of pages. We want the initial page 1. So let's say page num. Okay, and then we'll create a couple functions to change it to page 2, 3, and also to go back. Now, in the render page, we want to first set that page's rendering value. So we want to set that to true because it's in the process of rendering. So it's just letting the program know what the state is as far as the page being rendered. And then we want to get the page, and we do that by using that PDF doc object that we now have, and that has a method called getPage. And this getPage will take in the number. Okay, so we have num, which was passed in here, which is initially set to 1, and then this will give us a promise, so we'll say .then, and it'll give us a page. And if we console log this page, let's see what that gives us. So we'll go back, and you can see it gives us a bunch of stuff here, so some of which I don't even know what it is, but just a bunch of info. And then if we look in the prototype, there is a render method. That's what we want to call to actually render it on the canvas. Okay, and it takes in a couple parameters. And then this get viewport, we're also going to deal with this because we want to set the size, the scaling of the PDF. Okay, so let's go back and let's get rid of this console log, and let's first set the scale before we do anything. So I'm going to create a variable called viewport and set it to page, and remember it has that get viewport method. Okay, and then this takes in an object, and we can pass in the scale, and remember we have a variable up above called scale, and since these are the same, we can just do that. Okay, now what we want to do is take the canvas, and we want to set the height of the canvas to the viewport height. and then we want to set the width, canvas.width equal to the viewport.width. Okay, once we do that, we're going to then call page.render, and this page.render takes in an object. Actually, you know what we'll do is create a variable here. Let's say const render context, and this is going to take in the canvas context, which is going to be CTX, so just the context we created from the canvas selector here, and then we want to send in the viewport. Okay, so this right here. Now we want to pass this render context into the render method, and this will give us a promise. We have to do .promise.then, and no parameters here, but we're going to put an arrow function for our callback, and then we want to set the page is rendering value. We want to set that back to false because now the page should be done rendering. Now we do want to check for the page num is pending, so we're going to do that. We'll say if page num is pending, we want to check to see if it's not equal to null. Okay, and if it's not equal to null, then we're going to call render page and pass in that page num is pending, which will include whatever the number of the page is. Okay, and then we'll set it back to null. Page num is pending. We're going to set that back to null. All right, now the last thing I want to do is output the current page. Okay, just like we output the total right here, it should say page whatever of 5. So let's go outside of this page.render, which is right here, and let's say output current page. So we'll grab, let's use query selector, and we're going to grab the ID of page-num, and let's add text content, and we want to set that simply to num. Okay, so whatever is passed in right here as the num. So if I save that and we go back, you'll see that it says page 1 of 5, and it's showing the PDF in the canvas. All right, and if you want to change the scaling, of course you could do that. Like if we set it to 1 and save, now it's a little smaller, so it's up to you how you want to do that. But yeah, so now we can see the PDF. We can see what page we're on and the total number of pages. However, we don't have any functionality to actually change the page. So that's what we need to work on next. So back in our script, let's go right above the get document, and we're going to check for pages rendering. And we're going to call this Q render page, which is going to take in a num, and we just want to check to see if the page is rendering. Okay, if it is, then we're going to set page num is pending. We're going to set that to whatever the number of the page is. Else, then we're just going to render the page. All right, now where we call this is going to be within the show previous page and show next page functions that we're going to create, which are the functions that will fire off when we hit the buttons. So let's say show. Let's do show previous page, and we'll say const show previous page, which doesn't take in anything. And we want to check the current page number, so page num. We want to see if that is less than or equal to 1. If it is, then we just want to return. If we're on the first page, we don't want to go previous. And then we just want to take the page num and just do minus minus. We want to decrease it, and then call that QRenderPage method and pass in the page num. All right, that's it. Now for the next, we want to do pretty much the same thing. So I'm going to copy that. We'll say show next page, and instead of checking to see if it's less than 1, we want to check to see if it's greater than or equal to the max amount of pages, okay, which is going to be in pdf.num pages. Okay, if that's true, then we want to return. And then down here, instead of decreasing, we want to increment. And that's it. Now, obviously, we need a way to call these methods, these functions. So I'm going to go down to the bottom and let's say button events. So we're going to grab document dot, let's do query selector. And the buttons, we have prev page and next page as an ID. So let's do ID prev page. We're going to add an event listener. We want to listen for a click, and then when it's clicked, we want to call show prev page. Okay, we want to do the same thing for the next. So we'll change that to next page. Okay, so we'll save that. Let's go back and let's try it out. So we'll click next, goes to 2, 3, 4, 5. Once I'm at 5, I can't go any further. I can go previous. Once I get to 1, I can't go any further. Okay, so everything is working good. Now, I want to start on the styling. I mean, the functionality is there, but I want to add styling to the top bar. Also, I want to create, if there's an error, if it can't find the document for some reason, I want it to show that error and also get rid of the top bar. All right, so we'll do a little bit of DOM manipulation here. So let's close that up, and let's head into our style sheet. And this isn't going to be too much. I'm just going to, let's first of all add a reset. So we'll set the margin to 0, padding to 0, and then let's take the top bar, let's add a background of dark gray, color white, and let's do some padding. We'll do 1 rem, and then for the button, remember they have a class of btn. I'm going to add a background of coral. Let's do color white. Let's do border none. Let's also do outline none. And let's change the cursor to a pointer because they're buttons, not links. And then let's add a little bit of padding. We'll do 0.7 rem top and bottom, 2 rem left and right. All right, and then we'll just add a little bit of a hover state. So for the hover, I'm just going to take the opacity and set that to 0.9 just to give it a little fade out effect. And then let's see, the page info, which is this span right here, I just want to push that over a little. So let's say .page -info, and I'm just going to add a margin left of 1 rem. Now I want to generate an error, which I want to give just a little bit of styling. So it'll have a class of error, and we'll set the background to orange red. Okay, the color to white, and padding 1 rem. Okay, so that's it for our CSS. So we'll save that. Now if we go back and take a look, looks much better. So you can build your own interface. From now on, when you have to include a PDF on your site or your application, whatever, you don't have to do the standard, you know, just browser showing a PDF file. You can embed it however you want and have whatever kind of UI you want, which comes in really handy. Now, like I said, I want it to have an error because right now, if I go, let's see, if I go to main.js and I change this to, let's say PDF1, something that's not actually there, and reload, it's just blank, which may be okay, but I mean, it's not, I'd rather it have an error. I'd rather it not show the top bar. So what we want to do is go back in down to where we get the document, which is right here, and we want to add a catch to this. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of that semicolon and let's do a dot catch, and then this is going to give us an error, and we're going to create an arrow. Now I'm not going to just fill in an empty div, I'm going to create the div. So let's say display error, and we're going to create a variable called div, and we want it called document.create element. Okay, so this will create an element for us to put in the DOM. I want it to be a div, and then let's add a class name. Oops, I don't want that. Let's do div.className, and remember I created a style called error. That's what I want to give this as a class. Okay, now we want to take that div and we want to call append child because we want to add some text to it. We want to create a text node. So in here we'll say document.create text node, and the text node is going to be that error that we passed in. It has a property of message. Okay, so whatever's wrong will go in there as text, as a message. And then I'm going to grab the body, so query selector, and let's grab the body. We basically just need a parent, and then we're going to say dot insert before. Okay, so we basically want to take that div and we want to insert it before the canvas element. Okay, and then the last thing I want to do is remove the top bar so that doesn't show at all. So we'll say top bar. Oh, actually we don't have that, do we? Let's say document.query selector. It has a class of top bar, and then we just want to simply set the style dot display. We want to set that to none. Okay, so if there's an error, it should show and it should get rid of the top bar. So let's save that. Let's go back, and there we go. So it doesn't show the top bar anymore, and it tells us what's going on. It's missing this PDF file. And if I go back and I change this to be correct and save, go back, there it is. All right, so that's it, guys. Hopefully you found this useful. I like to try and look for, practical projects. I know we do a lot of crash courses with to-do lists and stuff like that. That's really to teach you the syntax of a particular language or framework. But I also like to do these little projects where, hopefully you can find them useful in your career. But that's it. Please leave a like if you like this project and video, and I will see you next time. So I just want to give a shout out to one of my patrons, Carlos Mafla, who has his own YouTube channel with a bunch of stuff that has to do with development. So front-end development, DevOps. As you can see, he just came out with a new video on React hooks, which seems to be very hot. So check his channel out. I'll put a link in the description. And if you're interested in becoming a patron, I'll also have a link to my Patreon page as well. So thanks, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.